All right, so we're going to get started with our session. So excited to bring on Diana. So first I'd like to just kind of start by talking a little bit about Yoga Health Nurse, the purpose of this talk that we're having today. So if you are new to the community of Yoga Health Nurse, I'm Lindsay. I'm the owner and founder of Yoga Health Nurse. And the mission of Yoga Health Nurse has definitely shifted over the seasons of my life. Most recently, we are, or when I say we, I mean I, because I'm really the only person doing it. um, the mission now is just really to give free nursing or to give free resources of yoga to nurses. So I've been asking Diana to come on, and she agreed to come on and talk to me about self-care and self-love. This month in the Yoga Health Nurse community, we've been focusing more on self-love because it's February. I'm a little obsessed with hearts. And so yeah, I couldn't think of a better person than the catalyst for self-care. And I am so excited to bring this talk to you today. We will be having live Q&A after. We have some questions from the community as well that people who couldn't make it today. So I will be asking those as well. But yeah, thanks for coming. And for everybody who's joining us live, I would just love to do the yoga tradition of, before we get started, just centering ourselves. So just find yourself in a seated, comfortable position and close your eyes. So flutter those eyes closed. And wherever you're seated, just connect to what you are seated on. So wherever your sitting bones are connecting to, the earth, the chair, the bed. Maybe your feet are on the floor. Any other parts of the body that are really connected and grounding you down. And then just take a peek at your breath right now. Doing our self-assessment. How's your breath? How's your mind? How are your emotions? Not judging yourself for them, but just noticing. And then collectively together, we'll take 3 big breaths. So we're going to inhale through our nose and exhale out of the mouth, and feel free to open the mouth to really let go of anything that your day might have brought to you thus far. So go ahead and close the mouth. Let all the breath out. Inhale through the nose. Exhale out of the mouth, part the lips. 2 more times as a collective. Inhale through the nose. Exhale out of the mouth. And breathe in through the nose. And out of the mouth. And continue that round of breath for 2 more times at your own pace. And then you can flutter your eyes back open and just make some subtle movements, something that, you might need to shimmy or shake or readjust yourself if you need to sit a little bit more comfortable for the time that we have together. And while we're doing that, I'm going to talk a little bit about Diana from my perspective. We are now fellow Maynards, weren't when we first met, but Diana came into the Yoga Health Nurse community, and we have been keeping in touch ever since. She's taken some of my online courses, but most of all, I love to follow her on Instagram. I think she has one of the most interesting Instagrams. I'm always amazed and shocked at all of the creative artistic ability that she has on her Instagram. It's Catalyst for Self-Care, and she gives so much great information for nurses to help with self-care and just quick tips and tricks. They're effective, they're easy. So that's how my mind and my whole life works. I like quick, effective, and easy. So that's one reason why, and many others why I asked Diana to be with us today. So welcome, Diana. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. So I would just like you to take a moment to kind of introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you do maybe as a nurse, and then what you are bringing to the nursing community as well.
Sure. Well, thank you for the intro. You're so sweet. And you do an amazing job as well. And I love that we're both in Maine now, so I can see you when the world is not
Yes.
falling apart in shambles.
Person.
So I am a neurology outpatient NP. I used to work inpatient, and I've been in the outpatient world now for about 6 years-ish, 7 years maybe. Time flies, as you all know. And I shifted from the inpatient world because I very much burned out in my first nursing job and my first NP job. And it was just a disaster. Like, it was fine for a while, and then it was, I had no boundaries. I really didn't practice self-love. I didn't have great confidence, and I had a really hard time putting myself first. I very much wanted to be like a people pleaser and do all the things to like prove myself like a good NP. And, eventually, and I don't think it was just my fault. I think there were a lot of things like in the department in like healthcare that are a hot mess, let's be honest, that set me up for failure. But there were some things that I probably could have done differently to support myself. So I love my job in the outpatient world. I have much better balance. I'm a mom now. I have 2 little kiddos. I moved back to Maine, to my homeland. This is where I grew up. And now I also have my Instagram, and I mentor nurses who feel like they need better work-life balance and want to prevent burnout as best they can in this crazy system that we are in, and or are already burning out. So I, like Lindsay said, I provide resources. I'm all about like time management. I don't want things that are super time intensive, because I know we're all super busy. Nurses, time is very scarce at times, as is energy. So I'm all about like bang for buck and actionable tools and just support, really. Like my DMs are always open, and I'm constantly talking with nurses and, trying my best to give the best advice I can, and just support, really. So that's what I do, and it's a blast.
Yeah. And I love that. I mean, the fact that like and I've watched you grow, obviously your Instagram too, and seeing you go into mentorship just warms my heart, because I think that you do have a lot of great tips and tricks. And usually when somebody finally, let's be honest, like it's not easy. And I think nurses are probably one of the hardest groups to convince to ask for help. And once they do that, like you are able to give those quick, easy, and effective tips and tricks for nurses to kind of get their self-care in order. So I love that. And when you started doing your mentorship, I was so excited for all of your mentees, because I know that you do such a wonderful job. And I'm going to have you talk about that at the end here, because that was one question that came up from the community, because they wanted to know more about your mentorship. So we'll get to that as well. But when it comes to self-love and self-care, so what I see a lot over the many years that I've been watching on social media, people make self-care and self-love look like so easy. And I kind of want to just say, like, self-love is hard. Like, it's very hard to learn to love yourself. And I think that, my burnout story as well. And I always say it's my seasons of life. Like I burn out in different areas. And I always like to say, like, burnout isn't the end all. Like you can see it as a new beginning as well. but it's really important to get these tips and tricks and tools, to have tools or resources for you. Mine just happens to be yoga. There's many other things that you can also get into your toolbox. But self-love, from my experience alone, and I don't know, I would love to hear what you think about this, but like, it's a very humbling growth experience. You have to really, really become raw. And in yoga, what has helped me with that is like meditation, because it's really hard to come to stillness with yourself and listen to what the hell goes on up here and not judge what you're thinking. And you really like, as we say in like yoga a lot, is like unpeel the layers of the onion to really get down. And I think understanding how you don't give yourself love at first is so important, to then understand how to give yourself permission for self-care. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
No, I like 1,000,000% agree with you. I think that like the self-love piece is definitely like the foundational piece. Even in like the mentorship program, like the self piece is the whole first module. Like we just delve deep into that. And it's like we go deep. Like this is like, there's a lot of things that we tell ourselves that aren't true, or the things that like we've believed for a really long time
Yeah.
that make us feel crappy, that just aren't factual. And until we actually like look at that story and ask ourselves like the very simple question of, is this true? you know, and then look for evidence in our life that negates that kind of yucky thing, like, oh, you're not confident, or oh, you're not smart, or oh, you're not good enough, or oh, you're whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Practicing self-love is sometimes just like forgiving ourselves for like being blinded by the light in some ways, and looking at these things that we say to ourselves and the language that we say to ourselves. I think self-love a lot of times is just how we speak to ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily, into the mirror, like, you're amazing, but I'm talking like just like the thoughts that we have. And you're right. I mean, the whole concept of like mindfulness in general is that whole concept of recognizing where our thoughts and where our minds at and being non-judgmental, right? That's like a huge part of it. And we are so hard on ourselves, so hard on ourselves, especially nurses. Like I think are unique in that we care so deeply and we work so hard to get where we go,
Mm-hmm.
that we just feel so like compelled to leave ourselves behind, for the greater good. And, I think we can still love ourselves and treat ourselves kindly and do the self-care and be a really freaking awesome nurse. In fact, I think in many ways it makes us much more effective.
Mm-hmm.
If for
Yeah.
a million reasons, like really.
100% agree. And I feel like in just going through the timeline, like I always feel like the stuff that we're talking about now, like I've been a nurse since 2007. I can't even, sometimes I say that and I'm like, what? I can't believe that, but it's crazy. But like thinking about nursing school and like how we really can help this nursing profession as a whole really get into this self-care, into this self-love paradigm, I think, and like, which is so important. But like in nursing school, you start off by your first day, you get a syllabus and you literally have an anxiety attack when you see all the stuff that you have to do on the syllabus. And then the thing that always stuck out to me was the passing grade, right? So like you had to, I know in my nursing school, like you had to get a C to pass the class. So automatically, like you are kicked into gear that if you don't get that, you're not good enough to be a nurse. And, regardless, like you might have test anxiety. Like I really was shitty and I probably still am. I haven't taken a test in a while other than some of these ones that come on like Facebook, but like I'm really shitty at taking tests, but like in clinic, and if I'm learning hands-on, like I am spot on. Like I love it. So, but in nursing, like we're bred to be like, okay, I have to be this good. And if I'm not here, then I'm under here and I'm not good enough to be I'm not good enough to be a nurse. And like the minute that you get something like you don't pass or whatever, you know, it's like you're not good enough. Then you have the people who are above caliber in your classes. And so then automatically you start comparing yourself to them.
Yep.
You're not necessarily comparing yourself to them as a leader, but rather, and I think sometimes comparison is good in the healthcare field because it makes you kind of determined to strive to get a little bit better. But there has to be that understanding of self-love that that's the competitive, and that's not me being like, oh, she's better than me and I'll never get there. So it all like that whole self-talk of like, I just think of like the first time I ever gave a shot, and I'm like, I would be like, oh my God, what if I can't do this? Or what if I do this? Instead, my mindset should have been like, no, you can do this. You studied for 7 hours, you've poked 30,000 melons and oranges, and like you're ready to do it on a new human. Like that whole positive mindset thing, it's totally, it's a practice in itself.
Mm-hmm.
And in yoga, like a lot of times you're going through your practices, and I mean, I still do it. I catch myself all the time. Like, I'm like, why am I tired? Like I should be able to do this lunge today, no problem. But I'm like shaking in this. So I think in life we do that as well. And you're right about like the negative mindset. And then we get to work, you know, you graduate, you finally become a nurse, and like you're working with other people. And again, you're comparing yourself, and it's a bad comparison, right? Because it's not driving you to do anything. But then you talk negatively to yourself every single day, and that's what causes that burnout to start to happen. And you don't have anything else to like bring you back up. It's always like and other nurses, let's just talk about that, like coming into the realm of negativity. Like you could have the best day and be like da, 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 like today is such a great day, I'm having, and they're like, oh my God, this is the worst ever. And they like get mad at you for being, they get mad. There's some nurses out there that get mad at you for being too chippy. I used to get that all the time.
I mean, there's definitely, yes, there's like that who's more exhausted sort of thing,
Oh.
which I have definitely talked about on Instagram before, which, you know, there's this culture within nursing where it's just, it needs to stop. You know, there's a lot of things that need to, I mean, we could have a whole live, you know, whole
Oh
Zoom,
yeah. I
like,
think I have a blog about that that says like,
and all that stuff, you
yeah,
know.
like sleep depression does not make you a badass. It makes you dumb, in my opinion.
Taking on 12,000 extra shifts and then like burning out because, and then like, okay, you know, then it's not really a good thing. Like,
Yeah.
no. And like, I think, but what you were saying, like a lot of the self-forgiveness is a really good way to practice self-love. I think that we, again, are really hard on ourselves. And I think for me, one thing that changed like my perspective for the better is just viewing failure as just feedback. You know, like you're not failing, you are learning, and we are all human beings. We all make mistakes, and all failure is feedback. That's all it is.
Mm-hmm.
And that
Yeah.
to me is like a big game changer.
Yeah. And I take that, I take that more into like, especially like the business realm as well. Like when you are trying to like use a business or give back to nursing in some way. But there's also this like thing when we are in nursing, like failure can kill people
Right.
in nursing practice. And that's like where I feel like it's good to be apprehensive sometimes. If you it's scary that when you don't know what you don't know. So it's good to kind of have that like survival instinct, I think, as a nurse.
Right. But
But
it's
you
more
also
like
have to become,
something, there's things that you don't know. Like the nurse is like, I know, that's the one that freaks me out.
yeah, me too.
You know what I mean? Like the girl that's like, or male, whoever, that's like, hey man, I'm kind of feeling nervous about this procedure. Like, can I just run this through with you? Or I have a question, so and so, or, you know, like, I'm pretty sure it's this, but I just want to make sure, you know, that's like, hey man, that's okay to ask questions. Like, again, we put this like pressure on ourselves that we need to like have it all figured out. And we don't. And I think that helps prevent against what you're saying.
Yeah.
But if we're like, it's like, no.
Yeah. And loving yourself enough to
Yeah.
be like, no, I deserve to to truthfully feel confident in knowing this. I remember when it was one of my assignments for my travel nurse assignment, and they put me on a unit that like had, our ICU always used to have epinephrine drips. Like we didn't do it on the tele floor, but like this floor I think was like a step down tele floor, and I was a relatively new nurse and I never did an epi drip at all. And I remember like asking the charge nurse, like, hey, can you just help me make sure that I'm doing the calculation right? Like, I don't want to kill anybody, obviously.
Yeah.
And I got reprimanded for asking.
What? See,
Yeah.
but this is where it comes to culture. I mean, this again has nothing to do about you as a nurse. This has
Mhm.
all to do about the culture of that unit and this human being.
Yeah, I got reprimanded because they didn't think that I was good enough to be on that unit. And I'm like, all I did was ask for somebody to double check
Yeah, but they
my
also
calculations on a high drug, like a high intensity drug. Like, hello.
so they
But
rather you not ask and kill somebody. That's
exactly.
totally their preference.
Exactly. And you know me with math, like, yeah.
Instruments.
I'm like, 1, 2, 3, 4. So
Yeah.
yeah, totally. But I like now, like practicing self-love that helps a lot with confidence. I think that's a huge thing too. And
Like
understand. Yeah.
yeah, no, and confidence, yes. I mean, there's so much to be said about level of confidence. I mean, we could talk about imposter syndrome, comparison syndrome, like self-doubt, self-esteem, like all of these things,
Mhm.
self-love, like all of these things sort of play into that. And it's really hard, especially when you're new to either a job or like as a new grad or whatever, or when you're with people like that that make you question like your
Mhm.
worth. It just feeds into that poor self-confidence. But I think one thing that really helps confidence is having little small wins, taking small actions and seeing that you can actually do it and then kind of build on that, or
Yeah.
again, writing
Yep.
all the lies that we tell ourselves. Because I'm telling you, if you sit down and really think about the things you tell yourself, there's a lot of bull that you tell yourself. Like
Yeah.
I
And
did
I
it
think
my
it's,
own, like I had my own mentor and I did it myself and I was really surprised what I came up with, and it really does help to reassess how you think about yourself.
Mhm.
And taking that pause is self-love. Taking that pause and giving yourself that time to really ask yourself that question and to really reassess that is self-love for sure.
That's awesome. So that's a great segue into the next question I have for you.
I heard you.
Because sometimes I have to like reel myself in because you know me, I'm like, so the next question, like especially talking about self-love, but since you're the catalyst for self-care, I really wanted to know just like what your definition of self-care is. What does self-care mean to you? And how do you feel that like self-love falls into that?
That's a good question. So I think when we all think of self-care, everyone's like bubble baths and journaling and candles and whatever. It's like, yeah, that's cool. But self-care has like so many different things because I think self-care and self-love are very tied to each other. I think self-care does tend to our needs physically a lot more. As opposed to like mindfulness, where it's like more like our thoughts and feelings and things like that. But self-care to me can look like setting a really healthy boundary at work, or having that difficult conversation that you need to have in order to give yourself more time and energy. There's so many things that go into it that I don't think it just is tending to yourself, like doing the face masks and stuff. If you like face mask, I love a good face mask, don't get me wrong. I love bubble baths. I don't get up much now because I have 2 kids that like monopolize the tub. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's filling yourself with joy from those external things, but also putting things in place to like give yourself time to actually and the energy and wherewithal to act
Mm,
on those things.
yeah, I love that. And like the self-love is, I feel working through self-love is the allowance or the permission
Mhm.
to be able to do
Yeah, there's
self-care.
action.
I feel like self-care is more like you said, like an action.
Yeah, it is. Exactly.
And self-love is like an more of like, I mean, thinking is obviously an action, right? But like, it's more of like that spiritual connection, mindfulness.
A lot of times if we don't have the self-love, we're not going to do the self-care,
Mhm. That
and
could be a barrier.
it's true. Like if you don't have the confidence, you're not going to set the boundary.
Yeah.
And if you don't love yourself, you're not going to have the confidence. And again, self-love in and of itself is so it's very broad. I don't think, it really is whatever makes you feel like you're worthy and that you are cared for and nurtured. And self-care can also promote that, but it's not just, again, those, listening to music and have a dance party. Those are
Mm.
fun too. But it's really just like self-advocating. Those kinds of things can be self-care because it protects you and it advocates for you and it makes you feel like you are nurtured and that you are safe and that you are, in a better place.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. And like most of us know that if we've ever went for like a spa day or a massage or something physical that like made you completely relax, a yoga class, restorative yoga, whatever it is, walk, like you almost have this like euphoric feeling, or climactic
Dopamine is like, ooh, la, la,
scenario. Yeah. And then you're just like, why don't I do this more?
all the time. Yeah.
And
And
then,
don't get me wrong, like doing these things regularly, like moving your body, it's all about, mind, body, spirit, right? You got your thoughts and your mindset, you got your physical health, like what nutrition you're putting into your body, like your movement, like we've got our we've got our movement here. And that is essential for like our self-love, our mental health, is to like move our bodies, put good food into our bodies, and not just like, I did have a pizza for lunch. I
that's okay. No judgment here.
forget that didn't happen. I'm just kidding. And then, just again, the way we talk to ourselves and things like that. But I think that's like the trifecta, it all matters when it comes to self-care. But, doing those self-care things, ooh, sorry, fluff. Doing those self-care things that are like the bubble baths and the movement and the this and the that, listening to music, joy activities are so important. I mean, no, I think a lot, like I know when I burned out, I forgot what my joy activities were. I honestly was like, what the hell did I like to do for fun? Like, what is fun? I almost forgot, like, because I was so like grinding away, miserable, like withdrawing from other humans. Like, I was irritable and just like not fun to be around.
Mhm.
Like, I didn't like being around my, like, I'm like lame. But it was like finding, kind of relearning what brings that joy in, and it's so important too to understand that what works for me and what works for you may not work for Tara, right? Like, it's so important that to know that all of these things are not one size fits all.
Yeah.
That's why, like with my page, it's like I put this all out there. I'm not telling you what to do. Like, I don't say like, you go do meditation now or else. It's like, no, like, look, there are these things that we know can make you feel better and can maybe like help you feel better in your heart and your body while you navigate this craziness that we live in. But journaling may not work for everybody.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, though, self-love is essential for everybody.
Yeah, I would agree.
Because again, if you don't have the self-love, you're not going to take the action of the self-care.
Mhm. Yeah, and I feel like, again, this is an action, but like creating space. I know for me, especially most recently, like in my business where I was becoming burnt out just from that, and I'm like, I and then I was judging myself because I'm like, okay, I'm here to help nurses not burn out, but I'm like burning out helping nurses. Like, what the hell is going on? But it's like to finally give yourself permission. I feel like that I just keep coming back to that because I'm like, I think that's so big, is to be like, okay, I'm going to give myself permission to take space.
Yeah.
So that's my self-care action, is to say like, I'm going to give space. And then all of a sudden, your brain starts to be like, holy shit, I can think again. And things start to happen. And then you start to get to know yourself again. Like, I was just talking to my colleague about this yesterday. I was sitting down because I have a plan. I'm a planner freak. But today and my weekends, like I sat down to kind of think about what I had to do. And I'm so used to just being like, writing everything down. And I didn't have much to write down. And then I got anxious. I got anxious that I was like forgetting something.
Yeah.
So it's like you're not, it's gonna take a lot of practice, right? Just like I feel like life's just one big practice. Like trying to figure stuff out. But it's like it takes a lot of practice to be like, okay, and identifying the mindfulness to be like, okay, I feel this way right now. And emotion, I always say emotion drives action. So when you're in these self-care things and you feel really good, that emotion is going to drive you to do it again and again and again. And that's what you have to go back to every time when you come up with these barriers, which we will get to, I promise. Because I love talking about barriers.
Yeah, I mean, there is science behind that. Like that whole concept of like when you do an action that gives you that dopamine hit, like your body like likes that. And our minds like the path of least resistance, right? You know, like there's science behind I mean, there's books about it. I don't know if you read up like Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
It's a great book, right?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
mean, science behind this that like tells us this is, and that's how you can like retrain your brain to do these things. I think when it comes to like what you were saying about the planner and like scheduling things and all that stuff, one thing that I'm a big believer in is that we, being like a human, should be on our to-do lists. Like we need to be at the top of our to-do lists, and we don't do that. We always think of all this other shit and all the other people that need help and all the appointments and the this and the that and the laundry and the this. No, like we need to schedule time for us to be, because there's a lot of doing out there, but there's also a lot of being that we need to be. And we need to give ourselves, like you said, that space to do that. If we don't give ourselves physical space to be, then we get lost.
Totally true. I love that. I can't believe it's already like almost 3:40. I'm like, I gotta give it item time.
And what? And then what?
All right, because I want to make sure we get all these questions in. Because I told you I'm like squirrel.
Planner, look at you, girl.
I know. I want to make sure. Okay, so we talked about the tips, the tricks, and the tools. And I wanted you to just give, maybe your 3 favorite tips, tricks, or tools in order to start to implement self-care, self-love into a nurse's life.
It's going to seem super lame, but I think the biggest like tip and trick is really just like step 1 is self-auditing. Like just check in with yourself, like on the regular. Like honestly, I'm a big fan of like after your shift, before you even leave, like sitting in your car, just like sit there and just ask yourself, like, what am I feeling right now? And you can set the intention in the morning, like, what do I want to feel today? Because if you set that intention, you're more likely to check in again and be like, how am I feeling? Am I there? Like, what do I need to do to get to that feeling versus like just the doing and the doing and the doing, And that's where we can kind of implement self-care. So I think self-auditing is so huge. I think that also just trying things is really important. I think sometimes people get really intimidated by the concept of like, oh my God, like, well, what should I do? There's all these things out there. Like, I've never done yoga. Like, oh my God, should I do yoga? What if I'm really bad at it? Like, should I do meditation? Like, there's this journal that's been collecting dust on my shelf. Like, maybe I should use that. It's like, just fucking do something. Just try it. If it doesn't work for you, fine, but you might feel amazing. And if you don't just take the leap and do something, even if it's 5 minutes, honestly, there's so many like self-care. I have a whole thing on my blog about like 20 things that take 5 minutes that can promote your self-care. It's like, there's so many things that take 5 minutes that like really can make you feel better. So you just do that little action, and it's like a gateway action to like more action. And then you just build and build and build. And then you have habits, and then you have a lifestyle, and then it's like, you're in a better place. But it takes, if you don't take that first step, nothing's going to change.
Mm,
It's a
true,
fact.
true. And then you can't bitch about it if you don't try.
I mean, you can, but I'm going to stop listening because I'm going to be like, yo, I haven't done anything.
Yeah. No, I love that because like the first thing you said, like that is just an example of centering in yoga. I mean, we do that before we start our
Yeah,
practice. We
yeah,
did that today. So, and that the more that you do that, the more you practice, the more you're going to be better and the more you're going to be able to identify when you need to do that. There's times in our lives that just is in fast forward and we're in fight or flight response. And it's like, it's good to understand like, okay, I'm having anxiety. This is anxiety. My palms are sweaty. I need to take a moment.
totally.
And then exactly like what you said, like just go out and do something. I mean, yeah, if it's yoga, great. But if you have that like hour that you have for yourself or the 15 minutes or the 10 minutes or the 30 minutes, like go do something that you're gonna have fun doing. I
Right.
think like you said, a lot of the times like we get into this like, well, they're doing this or someone else is doing that and I should try that. And it's like just you might have to try a lot of them just
Yeah.
see but whatever is fun because you're gonna go back to something that's fun. If you dread it or hate it, you're not gonna do it.
Exactly. I have a friend that just started climbing. She's like climbing. She's like the last person I ever think would
Yeah,
climb. And she's climbing. She's like, I want to ice climb. I'm like, who are you?
yeah,
But she loves it. And I'm
yeah.
like, that's
And I
awesome.
think
Good for you.
that changes. It changes with the different seasons of your life. Like
Totally.
I think now, especially with like pandemic, people, I mean, nurses are, some of us are working from home, but most of us are still going out. So you still have that like, but
Mhm.
people who are working from home are like trying to find new things to do to get the hell out of the house. I mean, people haven't been this connected, I feel like, to nature in such a long time just because
Yeah.
like I got to get out of this place.
Right.
I got to get out of the house. I got to get out of the building. I got to go get some fresh air, which is great because that's self-care to get outside and
Yeah,
get
I
some.
think the last thing though, that I just want to mention is that as much as like we're talking about like taking action and all that, which I really do feel is important, but I also believe that rest is an action that is very important. And there are times in our life where rest can be equally as productive as all the other things, and we should not feel guilty for resting. And rest can be that thing. That rest can be self-care. Sitting on the couch can be fulfilling and give you energy. If it's giving you energy, it's a positive. If you're sitting on the couch vegging, like plowing, ruffles, and then you feel low vibe, that's not helping you. That is not the same thing. Like that's not like a renewal activity. It's just, I just want to point out though that rest in and of itself can be a very positive and a very needed thing, especially for nurses who work a million hours, who see crazy things. And sometimes you just need rest.
Yeah, love that because like I have that audio of like us shavasana. Like shavasana is our rest in yoga. I mean, you can do it for 5 minutes and it's just like it's a rebirth of
Yeah.
what you need. And like if you want to sit on the couch and eat your ruffles for 15, 20 minutes, it's the consistency that we don't want you to get into, right? But like there are some days that you don't want to talk to another person.
It's
You've
fine.
had a tough patient that maybe you lost or something like that. Like, and you do need to just veg out and not do anything. And that's completely okay. And again, to give
I'm
yourself.
totally like, and we all, whether you're introverted, extrovert, or whatever, like fulfills you and gives you energy. Like we're all different. Like my husband very much prefers to have quiet time and be like by himself. And I'm like, okay, I like to, go out for a meal or
Yeah.
I mean, I do like my alone time as well, but I'm kind of like a mix.
Yeah.
Like social events are not his jam. Like he'll do it, but he's not like, oh hey.
Yeah. Yeah. That's how Thomas is too. He's like he could be okay at his work is his outing and then like he's dealt with enough people through the for the day. So he's like, I'm good. I'm just gonna stay home and do me. And I'm like, I need people. Yeah.
Like Scott's been home since March. Like he has not, like he hasn't gone back. He's working, but he's working remote. So it's like
Yeah. No, again, we're all different. And I think that's something that is a huge takeaway from this as well is like when you look at what's working for you for self love and self care, understanding that you don't have to do what is trending,
No,
right? Do
it's
what's good for you.
yourself for how you feel, like feeling the emotions, but then also just like being okay with where you are at, and like saying like I'm not a bad person for feeling X, Y, and Z. It's just
Mhm.
feelings are okay. Like you can feel all the feelings. It's just important to know what message it's telling you.
And also understanding that self-love is fucking hard.
Oh, it is.
Like, and it takes practice, and you're not going to get it the first time, and you're probably not going to get it the 100th time.
And there's
But
no finish line. There's
yeah,
no like
yeah,
honestly,
there you
there's
go.
in your life where
Yep.
you feel crappy, and
Yep.
that's okay. Like there's no it's a constant practice. It's like
Yep.
anything. It's just self-awareness, and then just being kind to yourself, and what we've talked about. But there's no, it's not like in 2 years you're like, well, self-love's complete, I guess we'll move on to the next thing. It's like, no, it's like this isn't
Yeah.
ever.
It's ongoing. It's ongoing. And that's again, like every time you step on your yoga mat, you learn something new about yourself, about your body, about the practice. Like it's
That's
just,
what we do.
again, it's just taking yoga off the mat as well. But I wanted to get this one in because it's one of my favorite things to talk about, and I love like some of your, like as you've been talking, like you got a little tough love edge in there, and I kind of love that too as well, because I think sometimes people do need to have a little kick in the ass to get themselves to not make excuses anymore for themselves and to really start to show up. And I myself, I know not everybody actually is good with this, but like I myself need a kick
I
sometimes.
100%.
Um
And yeah, it's I think it's important whenever we're communicating with anyone is to show love and kindness, but also to be honest.
yeah, 100%. And so I just want to talk a little bit about barriers to self-care. So in your mentorship, in your time, like what do you think is, maybe the top 1 to 3 barriers that nurses?
Yeah, I think there's a lot, unfortunately. With the girls I'm working with now, a lot of it is time. A lot of it is, and we get into time auditing in a couple weeks, so hopefully we'll get them more time. Energy, lack of energy,
Mhm.
just like feeling really run down. They're working a ton of shifts. One got COVID, like, it's like there's life stuff that gets in the way, family stuff, things like that. And I really think that the self piece gets in the way a lot, like the self confidence, the self worth, the guilt, the shame, um, the feeling that you can't nurture yourself because you're not worthy of that,
Mhm.
gets in the way a lot, which makes me sad, because really, like, all first of all nurses are amazing, even like the ones that are grumpy and whatever. It's like they started somewhere,
Mhm.
and yeah, I think that a lot of it is the self, and really knowing that you can do both. You can be a caregiver and also give that love to yourself.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. And I just think like it is important to understand your big barriers. Just like when, I'm prescribing medications to a patient or trying to do something for a treatment of a patient, like I have to take into consideration what their barriers are, because it doesn't matter what I say, what I coach, what I teach, like if they're not going to be able to afford it,
Yeah.
get it, transportation, all that stuff, like it's not going to do any good. So I think, again, self love, self acknowledging, understanding our barriers is really important. And then breaking them down even further, because sometimes time is, like you said, like you just need a little bit more tools in order to find the time and create more space in your life so you do have that. And I know everybody talks about this like hour, right? And I always say, like, you don't need an hour, you need 5, 10, 15, maybe 30 minutes. And like it's not this like huge power hour that if you don't get an hour in, you can't check it off, right?
Right.
So
Yeah. Yes, I think there's a misnomer where people think it takes a lot of time. I mean, like for me, like I practice gratitudes every morning for a while, writing them down. Now I just do it in the shower.
Mm-hmm.
It takes 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a great way to start my day. I do it every single morning. I've done it for years, and it's
Yeah.
such a powerful tool. I love it because it really does shift your perspective. But it takes 3 minutes, and I do it when I'm in the shower. Just I'm there
Yeah.
anyway, thinking about whatever. I don't need to think about like what I need to get at the grocery store. I can think of that.
Yeah. And it did take you, at first to write it pen to paper to get into that
And I
consistency.
wasn't good about doing it every day. Yeah, I mean, in the beginning, it's always hard, and you have to give yourself grace. Again, like self forgiveness is a huge piece of this because there's going to be days where you just don't want to do anything, and that's fine too. Again, you can't. Nobody's perfect, and again, if like you do that and it doesn't work for you, cool, do something else. Like there's nothing wrong with that. But I think my point was more that these activities don't need to take up a ton of your time. And realistically speaking, there is always more time in your day.
Yeah.
I mean, if we look at your phone usage, anyone listening, go on your phone, look how much you're on your phone. I guarantee you could take 5 minutes away from that hours that you're spending on your phone and do something for yourself. Because all your phone is comparison syndrome, stress, anxiety. Like I tell all my mentees, like, don't go on your phone for the first half an hour of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Don't even touch it. If you use it as an alarm, do it and move it. Because the minute you go on your phone, you're like, oh my God, Karen's at the gym. Oh my God, like I have all these emails I haven't done. Like, oh, I forgot to return that thing to that store, and your mind it's like, start to do something for yourself. Even just that is a huge game changer.
Yeah. And one thing I've done on Facebook is like, instead of going to my news feed, I go right to my groups, because the groups are the things that I have chosen that I want to participate in. And majority of the time it's like, I mean, there are some like downer posts and stuff like that, but majority of the time there are people I wanted to like surround myself with. So like the same thinking and stuff like that. So like I always go to my groups and check my groups if I'm like scrolling.
Right.
Versus my news
too. Like when this whole, I mean, one thing that I've really implemented over the past year that's been major for me, again, this is just me, is limiting how much media I consume, like in terms of news and all the things. Like I think it was like May, June, where I really just was like, nope, I'm gonna choose my news sources. I will I'm not gonna have my CNN alerts on anymore. I turned off all my notifications on stuff, and I was just like, it's too much. Like it was just too. I was very anxious. I was like not feeling grounded, and it really made it huge. But again, it took that self check-in to say like, I'm not feeling settled. Like what is going on? Why? Like where is this coming from? Where's the feeling coming from? And then again, taking that action.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. I know we could talk for hours. We have like, it's just so good. So yeah, so thanks for discussing that. And I wanted just to open up for Tara, Erica, if you have any questions, you guys can feel free to unmute yourself and ask your questions or give us feedback, discussion. I just want to be conscious of your time because we have about 5 more minutes.
Yeah. Bring it on, ladies.
But I hope whoever is watching will hopefully take, this video or what we talked about today and implement at least one tip or trick or tool that we kind of talked about into their self-love or self-care. So, and if you guys don't have anything that, comes up, if something comes up afterwards, we can definitely help to address those as well. Oh, Tara, I saw that.
Yeah. Gosh. I've really been wanting to like implement this into my daily practice. And, I share a lot of my mental health journey. And a big part of that is self-love and self-acceptance. I think how can I like inspire others to do that on my platform and really get the ball rolling? Because I really want to be able to have a platform to do that and expand that. So what's a good way to kind of expand upon that. And how did you both feel inspired to do that?
Sure. I'll go first. So I think um it just from like speaking from how I'm trying to help nurses, like I think authenticity is probably very key in many ways. I think like myself, I mean, I'm pretty open about my anxiety. And I always talk to other nurses about that myself. I don't think I'm too open on like social media. Well, I will be now because this will be on YouTube, but I think that like in terms of like mental health, to be like open and honest, but where it's serving you as well, because you obviously want to be, you want it to be healing for you. And I think a lot of times we teach a lot of stuff that we need to hear ourselves. So I think by on your platform, by just kind of sharing your story openly, authentically, you're going to attract nurses who obviously have a lot of the same feelings, emotions, struggles as you have. And then once you attract those, you kind of just, talk and kind of get to know those people a little bit more and expand on what they need and what you have done to help yourself, like what has worked and also what hasn't worked, right? Because I think like we learn a lot from what doesn't work, but we're all different. So I'm more of the person that like if I'm scrolling on social media, like yeah, I like if you're wearing a shirt or something, like I like where your shirt is, I'll ask you, but like I really want to know the tools. Like if I'm looking at your lifestyle and I'm saying like I want to learn about how to be like that or how did she get like that? I want the tools. I want the action steps that I have to take versus looking at like your house or your walk. Like that's what I look at for social media myself.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
that definitely helps a lot.
I think the other thing is like finding people within your kind of niche. Like there's lots of nurses out there doing like mental health stuff. One I just talked to a couple days ago is the anxious RN. She's so sweet, but you might be able to like pick their brain, collaborate. You can even ask her like what kinds of themes, like I've had people asking this, like what kind of themes are you hearing from nurses that they need help with? And then you can see if there's anything that they need that you can support them with. But I agree. I think also making sure that it serves you and that you feel good about it because you don't, again, want to feel uncomfortable.
Mhm.
Um, and just yeah, authenticity, openness, kindness, which clearly isn't an issue for you.
Yeah, definitely. Because really, my main purpose is I want to be somebody that is serving the community.
Mhm.
Yeah, which is awesome. That's great.
Yeah, and we need people like you definitely, especially I think we're going to see a huge rise in like people struggling with mental health post COVID, especially
Yeah,
for nurses. So I definitely think that getting out there, sharing, what tips and tricks and tools that you show. I mean, I'll use some of them as well. Um, but yeah, everybody's unique and you can take, if you're a consumer, you take things that you want from certain people. And if you're a business person, I mean, I do it part-time, but you also will continue to learn, like, and your business will shift. Tara, you've been in the yoga health nurse community, I think since I started, and you see how many shifts I've made.
yeah,
So it's just giving yourself permission to show up as you are,
Yeah.
as you feel comfortable, and you have so much to offer that the nursing community needs, or any community. I mean, I always just use nurses, but
Right. And consistency and like just showing up is key. Like honestly, like you just keep showing up. Because even the little small things can make a difference. And if you're helping one person, you're winning. Like honestly.
Mhm. Love that.
So it's true.
Love that, because I feel like when you go to help people or when you go to start businesses, and I struggled with this too, it's like I have to make this much money, I have to influence this many people, I have to have this many likes and this, and it's just like through my work over the last couple months, I'm like, I don't care if, first of all, more people means more work, in my opinion. So I don't care. Like, I'd rather like make a huge impact on one person than just graze over 500 people. And honestly, if my email group or my Facebook group or whatever rose to 1,000 people overnight, I would be so damn overwhelmed. And that's just the reality. But if you are watching this on YouTube, please like it.
We're not saying don't follow us.
Yeah, we're not saying don't follow, don't like. We're just saying. But yeah, I mean, just like understanding what that whole thing, because like, I think that's what I struggled with most. Comparison theory, comparison syndrome, and looking at other people who are like-minded nurses or whatever, and like still comparing that and being like, this is where I should be. And then I'm like, Lindsay, wake up. Like, you work full time. You're planning for a wedding. You just moved across the country. Like, you can't be that. And do you want that? I think that was my biggest question, is like, do you want that? And I was like, yeah.
And you want it to be fun. You don't want it to seem like, like, oh, here I go. Like, I have to do this. It's like, no, I get to do this. This is good. Like, I feel good.
Agreed. But Tara, you're going to do great. I'm so excited to see some of the stuff that comes out. So I follow you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm excited to see where this takes me.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Good. All right, Erica, we're going to put you on the spot to see if you have anything. And
my biggest one would be, do you have any extra tips for nurses who are dealing with like not only their work, but also like health challenges on top of it? Like, is there any extra kind of self-care burnout advice you have for us?
Like in regards to your health or your mental health, or just feelings of burnout?
Yeah, I guess in regards to burnout, because I guess it's really like you see so many people and you're like, ugh, like they can achieve so many things, like they're doing this, they're doing that. And then it's like having to like rain check your expectations, because you're like, oh, well, like that probably wouldn't be realistic for me, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that gets back to the whole like comparison syndrome thing, where we look at, I don't think comparing ourselves to someone else's journey is healthy, because we don't really know what's going on with their life. They may be really unhappy, or what you see isn't necessarily the truth. It's like Instagram. Instagram is like a highlight reel. It's not necessarily real life. So I think focusing on really self-reflection and knowing like what you want and what you're looking for and where you are at and where it's like that Maslow's, hierarchy. It's like, where am I in that pyramid? Like, where are my needs not being met? And then deciding how you then fulfill that. Because I think when we're looking at others, we tend to just neglect ourselves even more, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I would add to that too, Erica, is like, instead, like, again, this is around mindset, but like couple tips. So for me personally, I didn't have a physical barrier for my business, but I had a time, well, I guess time is physical, right? So I had time barrier, but I didn't have like a body physical, unless like my tight hips are a physical barrier. Which are totally a physical barrier in yoga. But like with a time barrier, comparing myself to other yoga teachers who work full time, other yoga teachers who have more time, more money, more energy to be able to show up fully every day, every week on the internet. Like, yeah, it's easy to get down that road of like comparison, but understanding like, is that really what I want to do? And then going into like yoga, like when, again, comparison, like looking at other yoga teachers, like they're teaching handstands, they're teaching advanced yoga poses, and like I'm over here like, if I can hold a lunge, if I can do a dolphin pose, like it's a good day, so it's understanding that and attaching to those people who are on the same level as you and that are going to actually bring you up, versus always bringing you down, and then switching that mindset of like, I wish I had that, the scarcity mindset, in going to the abundant mindset and saying like, I have this now, this is where I am. So I feel like that might be a little bit helpful, but finding your people in terms of like, for understanding your barriers and then finding the people who can help you through that with the barriers that you have is important.
Yeah, I also think it's important to remember that, you can, by celebrating those small wins, you kind of like get yourself in a better mindset too. And that you don't need to know all the steps to get you somewhere. You just need to see step one, and then things will happen. It's just, we put that pressure on ourselves that we have to have it all figured out, and we really don't. You just need to know what that first step is.
Yeah. And then like you said something brilliant. There's no finish line. I love that. I love that because I'm a competitive person, and I always strive for some finish line or whatever. And it's like, just by saying that was like my aha moment during this conversation. Like, I was like, she's so right. There is no finish line. So
no, we're all in different parts too.
Yeah.
But you can't compare your step 1 to someone else's step 100. It's like we're on this track. We're all at different points, and it's hard to compare because you don't know where they're at, but you're just like, oh, they're doing better. But it's like, okay, well, you know what? Maybe they've been doing it for a year longer than you, or whatever. Like, who knows? Who can, like, you're still doing great, and focusing on like what you're doing well. That's why I think like at the end of every shift, really asking yourself, like, what went well today? Like, what did I do well? I actually did this like post shift reflection PDF that if you want to or I can send it to you, Erica. It's just like very simple questions that you can ask yourself at the end of your day that just remind you that, you know what, maybe I'm doing better than I think. It's like, what did I learn today? Because we just like get in this autopilot of like, oh my God, I'm so tired. I have to keep going. I got to get home. I got to cook dinner. I got to go to the supermarket. If we just take a moment, like literally 5 minutes to just pause and just like go within here and ask ourselves like where we're at. I really think that has a huge impact on your level of burnout for sure.
Mm-hmm. Does that help?
Yeah, that's really, yeah. I think that's really helpful.
Question?
Yeah. I think I am getting better about it, but like even, like in yoga, I'm not as obsessive about stuff as I used to be. I think like because I've, been to your classes and you're very accepting of like limitations. And then I went into an in-person class with a nurse, and she was just like way better about stuff than other people. So yeah, I think in some areas I'm getting better, and some I've still got some progress to make.
Yeah. And when it comes to yoga, I mean, honestly, like yoga is just like everything else. You're going to like some teachers, you're going to not like some teachers. And the more that you practice, you're going to learn. Like I was doing a practice yesterday, and I use Gaia for when I need a quickie. And I did a video, and the girl was like, I think we were in pigeon or something. And she's like, bend your back leg, and, trying to get that. Oh, and just grab your foot. And I'm thinking, are you effing crazy? I can't just grab my foot. My knee will snap in half and it will be a disaster. So I grabbed my strap and I put my strap around the foot, and I was able to still do it. So I got the stretch on the top of my thigh. But by the time I grabbed my strap, the girl was like on to the next damn thing. And I'm thinking like, okay, well, wait for us who need straps. So you will experience that, but you have to just like laugh or giggle about it, give yourself permission to like, and it's easier when you're doing it at home because you literally can hit the pause button versus like in person where, That's why I love props too, because that's usually me on the other end using props to when you have advanced people. And thank you for that comment, by the way. I really take that to heart, and I appreciate anybody who comes into my yoga classes to be able to feel safe and comforting and know that they're not doing handstands in the middle of the room in my classes. And if you are, you're doing it on your own. Awesome. Well, I don't want to take up anybody else's time. I mean, we talked about how important time is, but it's been a pleasure to have this conversation. And if you are watching this live, you will have a replay available, and feel free to reach out to Diana or I with any further questions. I will definitely share Diana's information in the Free Yoga for Nurses group, and find her on Instagram at Catalyst. Well, you can say it. Yeah, go ahead. Where can we find you, sister?
You can find me. So I'm on Instagram at Catalyst for Self-Care. I do have a Facebook page, but I'm not that good at it. I'm not as Instagram. I'm on there every day with tips, tricks, all the
Your
love,
Instagram is amazing.
much love. So yeah, that's the best place to find me. My DMs are always open. Come holla.
Thank you. I'm gonna
It just was so fun.
yeah, I know, it's awesome.